All right, how's it going, everyone? Today we are going to be going through the intelligence terminology. We've had the video on the different intelligence theorists. Now we're just going to kind of jump through and talk about the different terms that need to be talked about here. So the first is we are going to take a look at the idea of abstract versus verbal measures of intelligence. Basically, all we are saying here is that different intelligence tests are attempting to try to get both aspects of this. Like IQ tests are trying to measure both your verbal, so it's kind of like your book smarts, the things that you know, but also the abstract knowledge that you have. So kind of your street smarts, your ability to problem solve. And so IQ tests are meant to measure a person's potential, like what they are, what their projected future might be. But in the end, it does a bit of that, but it also just kind of reflects their factual knowledge, the things that they actually know. So just take all that in this idea that these IQ tests, the intelligence quotient tests, are attempting to measure both abstract and verbal intelligence, and in the end it does a fairly good job of doing both of those things. So next, one of the major methodologies of like figuring out how intelligent someone is often about how quickly they solve a problem or work through an issue, and processing speed is just kind of linked to intelligence. So the IQ test is timed, and there are some assumptions that if you finish it faster that you are smarter, and in some instances that is correct, but not in all instances. So the idea that your brain's neural pathways have quicker connections or have more pathways in order to get to the right answer makes you more intelligent is tied with this processing speed. People who answer questions quickly and with confidence, that is seen as a sign of intelligence and is marked as a sign of intelligence. So we have two concepts here known as fluid and crystallized intelligence. So when we are looking at intelligence, you can kind of break a lot of it down into two different methods. Or two different areas. You have fluid and you have crystallized. So the picture is going to give you a good idea of what's going on here. Fluid intelligence is talking about problem solving. How quickly can you work through solutions? How good are you at thinking outside of the box? How good are you at working through problems? That's fluid intelligence. And then crystallized intelligence is talking about your book smarts. How much information do you know about something? How long have how much studying have you had in this area? And the fluid intelligence is better when you are young and decreases as you get older, and crystallized intelligence is the opposite. You have less of it when you're young, but the older you get, the more that you end up having. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the FLYNN effect. So this is looking at intelligence tests, and it's kind of an interesting look at what's going on here. So basically you have the IQ test, correct? So we're looking at the IQ test, and we are looking at the performance of different countries, groups of countries really. And so what you see, 1950s, so your x-axis is different years, 1955, 66, or 1960, 1965, so on and so forth, 2005, all that. Okay, so all this down here is looking at the years. Your y-axis is talking about the average score. Now the average score in the IQ test is 100, and they level that bad boy out at the end. But this is what their scores look like. And so you can see this gradual progression of each of these different groups of people getting higher and higher, and that increase is seems to want to continue. So this is the FLYNN effect, just this idea that populations over time do better and better at IQ scores. And a big part of that is just, families that, education-wise generally get better and better and better. As, new generations, you can see the developing countries are what they're really looking at, and these developing countries, the more education that they have access to, obviously the smarter the kids are going to turn out, and the more education they have, the higher the expectation. So you'll see these developing countries really skyrocket in their IQ scores as they have more access to education. All right, so this is an interesting one. There were two psychologists by the name of Claude Steele and Joshua Aronson. You don't specifically need to remember their names, but they were doing this study on black college students, and what they found was that when they were reminded that their fellow black peers generally did worse on these types of standardized tests than their white peers, that generally speaking they did poorer on the exams than they normally might have. But when none of it was emphasized or they were not reminded of it, they did just fine, and their scores were similar to their white peers. And so this is the stereotype threat. It is, our history has, as we've said in this class, our history has an impact on who we are today, and not only ourselves, but the history of our family, the history of the people that we spend time with. And so when you look at the stereotype threat and people are reminded of like, oh, well, in past history, this certain group of people have done worse, oftentimes that plagues their test taking ability at the moment. So something that they have to keep in mind of, especially when giving different types of IQ tests. Okay. So Savant Syndrome is a really rare condition where a person with mental disability, most often autism, but has been marked in several other disorders, have what people have called like an island of genius. So you take a look at Stephen Wiltshire here on this picture. So this is only like half the picture. You can see to the right of him way over here that there's like a bunch of canvas that is still open to be painted. This is something that Stephen Wiltshire will do. He goes to cities. This is Mexico City specifically. He takes helicopter rides. In this instance, he took a 30-minute helicopter ride, and he drew this. Never seen the city before, never studied it, but he draws these just incredible pictures. And one of the things that he notes on these is getting like the right amount of windows. Like he's counted how many windows there are, and they've done studies. He's done tons of cities. He's done the city of Houston, actually. You can look that up. It's really nice. This just has a better overall picture than the Houston one. People kind of like take a look at his picture and then study real pictures and they're like, okay, what did he get wrong? And generally speaking, he gets very little wrong. They were doing he was doing the city of Rome, and people are like, okay, well, there's this specific landmark, the Tiber River. Like, did he draw this properly? It seems like it's too he's drawn it too big, or should you see the curve of the Tiber River going through the city? And then they went back up, looked at it again, and like, oh no, he's basically spot on. And so Savant Syndrome is a person that has an incredible intelligence in one specific area, but is also has some sort of mental disability. most often autism. And as you can see, there's other ones that deal with music and numbers and things of that nature. But it's pretty incredible just looking at this picture and honestly thinking to yourself, he saw that for 30 minutes, saw the real life thing, and then drew this out. And he's got space over there to the right. There's more off to the left. Just an incredible amount of intelligence in this one very specific area. And you want to go back to Howard Gardner. Well, this is what Howard Gardner was talking about. This is the information that he was looking at and talking to people about is, we have these different types of intelligences. It's not, Spearman's singular intelligence. Like, here's proof. So as, we talked about in the other one, Savant Syndrome is proof for Howard Gardner's theory that intelligence can be broken down into different parts. Okay, so when we are looking at the last bit, culture and intelligence, it's just this recognition that different cultures find different things a sign of intelligence. Different things, intelligence means different things to different people. And one of the real easy ways of kind of differentiating this thing is just looking at, what does Western culture think is important or is intelligence versus what do Eastern cultures see as intelligence. And this is broad strokes here, boys and girls, broad strokes. But rational debate, being able to devise categories or to break things down into subsequent parts, that is a sign of Western intelligence. Those are like things that Westerners are just like, oh, that person's really, really smart. While on the other hand, Eastern cultures might recognize like a person's ability to see contradiction and complexity in their social role, or being like successful in their social roles as a sign of intelligence. Know how, not playing the game, but knowing how to interact with people to, not necessarily get a leg up, but to be seen in a good light and to help other people. That is kind of the, once again, the broad strokes of Eastern culture. And so just noting that, we've got these IQ tests and, we're trying to better understand what intelligence is, and intelligence is just so open and varied that, there's no real good way of differentiating what is intelligence, and pinning it down to one subsequent thing is very difficult. So that's it for this. Is just all the terminology for intelligence. So thanks a lot, guys. You all have a good one.